Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. It's your host. Thank you so kindly for being with us today. Look, we're going to have a great show for you today. In the house, the first person was, of course, ABQ. ABQ is in from Brooklyn, New York. Second in, Patrick Magner from Houston, Texas. Third in, Eduardo Peña. Actually, it's Edward Peña from where again? Houston, Texas. Let's have Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. In the house as well, Lee the Bearcat, Austin, Texas. We have from Bruce Pollard, Kingwood, Texas. We also have Eric Hayes, Kingwood, Atascocita. We have in the house as well, Patricia Burton, Dennis Murphy, Todd Golden, Lorraine Gagne, Christy from Substack, and many more coming in. Les Cooper as we come in, David Grant. So as you guys come in, I call you out. I got, it's always kind of a ramp up towards Substack. All right. Oh, no, I got too much to cover to get that whole thing read, but Michael, but I'll start it. Egberto, snippets from a long one. Please read out in full. I can't. And this is a holy SHIT moment. House Republicans are pushing to slash nearly $1 trillion from two of the nation's bedrock safety net programs, Medicaid and food stamps, as part of their sweeping package. If the legislation is approved, millions of Americans would lose access to these benefits. We are covering that in detail. That is all we're covering in today's program. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. Get to the article that Brother Rudnin has gotten to us. Second one from Rudnin. USA Today, Trump sent 50 Venezuelans to prison in El Salvador. They were in the U.S. legally. Trump administration says they are gang members in the U.S. illegally. Available information finds they entered legally, had no criminal charges. Cato Institute, which favors libertarian limited government, found that 50 of the men entered legally into the United States out of the 90 who had known routes of entry into the country. They include construction workers, cooks, delivery drivers, a soccer coach, a veterinarian, and Mark, a makeup artist. We have become a horror. This is a shame. And guys, this can happen to anybody. It can happen to anybody who has an accent. It can happen to anybody who looks different. Again, and if you lose habeas corpus, that means you cannot challenge it in court. Understand this is what evil societies are made of. All right, second one from Trump, from Rudnin. Cato Institute, the government calls them all illegal aliens, but the 90 cases were, isn't that what I just read? The method that was, this isn't surprising because about half of the Venezuelans who have immigrated over the last 2 years came legally as well. Exactly. I got that. Okay. Pollard asks, what are we talking about today? South Africa? No, South Africa is a distraction. It doesn't take rocket science to realize that no, white people aren't being prosecuted or persecuted or genocided in South Africa. This is all made up stuff. The investigations about this have been made up. The crosses were symbols there for one farmer that, look, it's all made up. South Africa is still owned 80% by the 7% white people that are there. They still own all that land. The redistribution of land that has started is it's actually, to put it bluntly, if I were in charge of South Africa, if I were in charge of America, I would get rid of the land. Well, I'll leave that for another day. But the reality is no, South Africa is a distraction. I'm just going to say that I am very impressed with how Tamahosa worked with the president, and without losing his cool. He showed he had a lot more class than this evil thug that we have as a president. He showed he had class in front of this thug, and that this thug allows himself to be manipulated with lies, shows not only that he can be manipulated by a white supremacist, but that he is, in fact, a white supremacist. The president is. So no, South Africa is a distraction. The $400 million plane is a distraction. In fact, to point that out, what I did this morning, and I'm glad you asked the question, my dear brother Bruce, because I wanted to let people know that please, please, please don't be concerned about politics. I did one complete story on the that issue. One complete story on that issue and one complete story on the $400 million plane. All right. I don't even think I did a complete one on the plane. And then today I wrote on my Substack, and let me put what I wrote on my Substack on the screen right now. And I wrote this. I have written a story about the $400 million emoluments clause breaking Qatar 747 story and about the supposed Afrikaner refugees. They are real stories because the president put them into the ethos, but they are distracting nonetheless. One story is enough with pertinent references later on. Well, Bruce just caused me to give a pertinent reference to these two stories. We all know Trump is a mob-like thug and a white supremacist president, and we chose to elect him again because he is America. The people who voted for him and those who stayed home because they could not put a country ahead of their prejudices prove who we still are, even as we so want to change. I won't put these stories on a reel like the mainstream media, MSMR. That is what Trump wants. It will distract from the real story. The financial rape of the working class, both MAGA and the rest of us alike. We need to keep our eyes on the ball and let America know what is being done to them with their consent. There is still time for us to force a course change, but we must educate effectively. Let's not bring the failures of the mainstream media to Substack. Let's inform. Let's enlighten, let's promote empowerment, and let's educate. That is what we need to do. So again, no more African story about the refugees that aren't refugees from South Africa. No more stories about the emoluments clause of this airplane that we've already built. You guys, all of you who voted for Donald Trump, that's your thing. That's your thing. You can work with his crookedity on those things. But you know what we want to work on here? We want to work on the things that really matter to our MAGA brothers and sisters, to our Appalachia brothers and sisters, to our progressive brothers and sisters, the things that really matter. Okay? So that's where we're at. All right. Let's see. Lee Grant is in the house. He says, yay, all. We also have... Para ver. Michael says, I wonder how many racists didn't vote for Harris. A lot. And they were all progressives. Okay. And they were progressives, my brother. They were progressives. The racial thing is not a thing that is only on the right side. It's everywhere. I live it. I go to Netroots every year, the biggest progressive gathering in the country every year. I live it even out there surrounded by progressives. I've told you guys a story about being there and when Black Lives Matter came to Arizona and interrupted Bernie Sanders, and I tried to get interviews with a few people, and it was this guy did it to my face, and I went up to these 4 white guys and a girl, or 3 white guys and a girl that were standing there, and I said, hey, what you think about what happened? I wanted to get their impression of what occurred. And one of the guys, I asked all of the guys, they looked at me sort of with disdain as I went up to them with the mic to do an interview. Nice. We were all progressives, right? So I went to the young lady and I said, hey, you want to tell me how you felt about what happened and what you thought about it? Was that the right way to do it, the right place, all of that? She said, I'll talk to you. So I said, okay, come on. And the guys made fun of her. And they said, okay, let's say her name was Anna. I don't remember her name. Okay, Anna, go be our token white. And I turned around and looked at these guys like, wait, you remember who we are? All of us, remember who we are? So the fallacy is that somehow we progressives are so much better than those right-wing MAGAs. The one thing we do is we want to change. We want progressives mean we want to make progress. It doesn't mean we have already progressed. We're still trying to make progress. All right. Michael Radin says ICE is going after brown people first, but yes, after they're done with brown people, who knows who may be next. If you're white, understand that your skin color isn't a shield, especially if you're a Cuban white with an accent, a Salvadoran white with an accent. Be careful, beware. They need to get those numbers up. My brother Tim Danahy is in the house. He says, does anybody wonder how the House can pass a bill that they violated House rules and didn't have time to read 1,100 pages? And I bet not one representative is aware of its content. Well, guess what? We're going to talk a lot about its content today. That's what we're into today. So stay tuned, Tim, my brother Tim Danahy, that we still have until June to do the piece that we're working on. All right. Paul Fleming says FDA Commissioner Marty Makary says the public has said no to COVID boosters and that 70% haven't gotten one because they don't trust us. Comforting words from the guys in public health. No, people are lax, but, my daughter just said she thinks she better run and get a booster because this administration is going to put us back again like it did the very first time. All right. Michael Ranz Egberto, most progressives who didn't vote for Harris would tell you it came down from Gaza, Biden and Gaza, not racism. They can say that, but the way they can say that, and I can't say what's in their heart. But they voted for Clinton after he did what he did in Bosnia-Herzegovina. They voted for Obama after he did his issues with drones. But Obama was a man. He didn't have the double whammy, right? He wasn't female and black. He wasn't female and something else. You hear black men voted for Trump not to vote for her. It's sexism, misogyny, racism. She had the trifecta. So no, my dear brother Michael, racism had a lot to do with it. And when you hear the pundits talk about, it's because of the economy, only a fool can say it's the economy when America has the best economy, but nobody wanted to hear that America had the best economy because it would defeat their prejudices. Like I said in the piece that I wrote, and let me get back to it because I was very careful in the words that I chose. I was very, very careful in the words that I chose. And let me get to my notes to say what it is. And the words that I chose were as follows, my brothers and my sisters. And it went like this. The people who voted for him and those who stayed home because they could not put country ahead of their prejudices prove who we still are, even as we so want to change. Okay? But that's who we still are. That's who we still are. The fact that a felon can still even have 40% support, 38% support, a felon, a thief, one who harms women when placed against anybody else. That speaks about us, not him. That speaks about us. And we have to realize that first. The fact that what's occurred in South Africa, we don't have a wave of people saying, my God, I just came from South Africa. You know how many business people just came from South Africa and know the truth? And how many of them have gone on to TV and say, oh, no, that is not true. Okay, Americans have to take responsibility. We can't just say Trump is saying this. The reporters are saying, Trump says about the genocide in South Africa. Every single reporter shouldn't put it up to doubt. Every single reporter should be out there saying, one, there is no genocide in South Africa. Absolutely no genocide. Every white, black, blue business person that is leaving South Africa, and there are many of those, should immediately get on TV. They should have no problem getting interviews on TV and say, no, that isn't South Africa. If you want to see a genocide, go to South Sudan. You want to see a genocide, go to where the Uyghurs are. But we are not honest. The mainstream media, the ones that you're watching, whether it's MSNBC, ABC, CBS, Fox News, they could put all of this to rest immediately. They could simply say it's not true. South Africa South Africa and Nigeria are the panaceas in Africa. Modern cities, people living in modern city, just like you have crime in Los Angeles, crime in Chicago, crime in New York, and these places. It's the kind of crime you have in South Africa, that we have to sit down and say, because a few of our white folks in South Africa were killed or beaten by a few thugs in South Africa, and then they come and they claim, oh, they're taking our lands and it's a genocide. It makes us look like fools. Not only the president, but those who elected the president. Come on, people. Every businessman could be out there saying that is crap. But instead, they give this boy toy that we have as a president some sort of a notion that it is possible that there is something there. Come on. That's not the president's fault. That's our fault. So, my dear brother Rudnin, people can say whatever they want to say. Actions speak louder than words. I got a lot of wake-up calls interacting with only progressives that I go to every year. Every year, I do the work many times. The setup and a Timbuktu podcaster comes and they bring candidates to the good person, and I have to hustle for candidates, but I do it. My parents taught me, you're not a victim. You go if you have to work 2 times as hard for half the benefit, work 4 times as hard for the full benefit. So folks, let's be honest. Let's be very, very, very honest. All right. I need to get busy with our videos. By the way, Michael said, Egberto, America's best economy under Biden lowered the inflation rate, but that just meant prices are going down more slowly. A lot of working class people who had economic anxiety stayed home and didn't vote rather than buying Trump lies. It's sad. The mix of racism, economic anxiety, worries about our complicity in genocide, etc., led to 2024, and now we have to deal with it. Yes, I get it, brother Rudnin. I get it. But many of those same people got up and voted for Biden. They got up and they voted for Biden. When you put Kamala Harris's policies next to Trump without a name, the polls were overwhelmingly in support of Kamala Harris's policy. When you put her face onto it, it was 50-50. Let's not fool ourselves. All right. What else have we got here? Robert Reich from my brother Tim Danahy. Robert Reich writes of a clause in the new big beautiful bill that denies funding for the enforcement of contempt of court by executive branch members. Yeah, it's there. And what that is the executives trying to control the judiciary. It is amazing that even if that passes both the Senate and the House, it is unconstitutional. So it won't make it through the muster of the Constitution at all, in my opinion. All right, I encourage people to see Wag the Doll with Dustin Hoffman and Robert De Niro. We are so easily manipulated. Exactly. Bruce Pollard says, are you sure there are not some people who have feelings that range back to before 1820, or a friend is sensitive to that being an argument for bad treatment in South Africa? I think both ways. No, I mean, you can think both ways if you'd like to. But look, if there is generally a simple answer, especially in these times, it's a simple answer. Egberto, sadly, our elections have shown that our people don't vote by policy preferences, they vibes and emotion. I agree 100%. But it's vibe, emotions, and prejudices. I don't want us to leave that out, brothers. I don't want us to leave that out. You got to keep that in. All right, let's see what else we got here. All right, let's go to the first video. I say rename the big, beautiful bill. Okay, let's rename that big, beautiful bill. Let's go. Ali Vitali, a correspondent from MSNBC, breaks down the initial looks of the bill that just got passed, what's in the bill, and it's probably worse than what one believes. Now, this bill doesn't have to go through. We have to see if Donald Trump is going to bend the wrist, bend the hands, bend the whatever of the senators to force them to pass this bill. Well, he was pretty successful in the House. They made some little bit of changes here and there to the bill to get it through so that it would be face-saving for the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus was inconsequential, but, Trump gave them a little tick here. The Blue Caucus, the ones who wanted the SALT, meaning the sales tax relief that for the blue states that have high taxes, etc., they gave them a little bit more, to appease them. But basically, the evil within the bill remains. Medicare cuts, SNAP cuts, cuts to green energy. I mean, it is an utter mess. I want you to listen to Ali Vitali, and then we'll come back on the other side.
700 pages of bill text, and then another 40 or so in that much anticipated manager's amendment, which has most of the compromises that Republicans made with leadership in it. It was a lot to parse through, but some of the top lines here. The first piece of this, the top line spending number around $4 trillion, about $2 trillion in cuts, but the actual debt increase is the piece of this that we've heard a lot about from hardline conservatives. According to the Joint Committee on Tax, a nonpartisan group that works with the Congressional Budget Office, $3.8 trillion increase to the debt because of this bill. In large part, that's because of the tax changes that are made here. Extending the 2017 Trump set tax rates was a key priority. It's also one of the biggest things that adds to spending in this package. But another big point of contention was this SALT deduction cap. Now they've negotiated it that the cap will be $40,000. That's up from the $10,000 that was initially negotiated in 2017. That's a big win for people in blue states, people like Mike Lawler and others. So that was a key compromise point. Then also raising the child tax credit, no tax on tips. That was a big promise from President Trump during the campaign. Reforming IRS tax rules on U.S. hostages, personal privilege on this one because I brought you this story back in January. It basically means that if you are taken hostage or wrongfully detained, you're not going to get hit with some IRS fees on the back end of that detention because, of course, you couldn't have paid your taxes during that time. On energy and tech, terminating Biden-era clean energy credits, this was another point of contention. It now sounds like, according to the manager's amendment, this is going to happen sooner rather than later. That might placate some Republican members who were initially unhappy. Also, investing in U.S. AI infrastructure is another piece in the energy and tech sector. On healthcare, and this is what we've heard Democrats talk about a lot, even some Republicans concerned about this, in large part because by bolstering Medicaid work requirements and increasing eligibility checks, it means that people are going to fall off of healthcare coverage potentially and creates a lot of red tape here. Also, barring Medicaid and CHIP funding for gender-affirming care for minors, a continued attack on the LGBTQ plus community in this bill. Also, blocking Medicaid money from nonprofit reproductive health providers. When you hear people talking about defunding Planned Parenthood, that's this provision, and it actually costs Republicans $300 million to do that. So it's not a cost saver in the end at all, though it does complete a policy priority Republicans have been pushing for a while there. And all in all, this means that 8.6 million Americans, according to the Congressional Budget Office, again, a nonpartisan group that scores or predicts what the impact of the legislation is, 8.6 million Americans will be without health insurance. The fact that these Medicaid work requirements now phase in 2026, earlier than they initially had been written, that placates some Republicans, but it also means that this is now squarely an election issue, as if it wasn't already. On food assistance, it's a similar story. It cuts $260 billion to SNAP, that's the food stamp program, requiring states to share SNAP costs by 2028. That's basically a big overhaul to the basic funding of this system. It also tightens work requirements for SNAP recipients, similar to what we see them doing on Medicaid.
Now, this is just a preliminary look of the bill. I haven't taken a look at the bill, the verbiage myself quite yet. I'm simply dependent on what the highlights are that's been placed in Washington Post and other places. And it is bad. It is bad. And the people that it harms the most, the ones that will be harmed the most, are those who voted for Trump. The lower end, the working class. Over the years, it takes all of their money and transfers it right up to the top. I mean, it is sad. But here's the thing. If you think that Trump is not with this bill isn't going to hurt you, my dear MAGA friends, because they teased you with a few things like no tax on tips, that really you weren't paying tax on tips if you made under a certain amount anyway. It is simply sad. Let me tell you, Oklahoma, very red state, they can't get FEMA help. We've got FEMA cuts and all kinds of cuts that they don't want to spend the money to help Oklahoma, who went through a lot of storms. And the governor of Oklahoma, Huckabee, served Trump directly. Josh Hawley was the one on January 6th giving the thumbs up. He was all for January 6th. He was all for protecting Donald Trump. Missouri got hit real bad by storms, and the Missouri mayor is begging for money. Josh Hawley is begging for money. Trump, please come to our assistance. Please listen to us. Trump saying, c'est la vie, bro. FEMA not reacting. Now, if this is happening for Missouri and Oklahoma with Republican governor, Republican senator, not only Republican governor or Republican senator, but MAGA governor and MAGA senator, and you can't get any help from Donald Trump. It's a grift. The guy is in it simply for what we said from the beginning. We told you so. The tariffs were to take all of your money and give it to the wealthy. All of you pay more at Walmart. All of you pay more at Target. All of you pay more in the grocery stores. And the more that you pay goes into the treasury to pay for this bill. Look, this is what we told you were going to get. Now you got it. The question is, are you going to be smart enough to demand of the senators? The bill goes to the Senate now for conference, right? Not for conference, to put their version of the bill. And then it comes down to conference. It is on you now to ensure that the Senate doesn't take this bill up and just vote for it, because they can. The Senate can take this bill up and the Senate leader can say, okay, we're going to vote on this bill. And they just vote on the bill and pass it as is. They have the choice to do that. Only you can put the fear into those senators to stop them from doing it, to force them to change it and send it back to the House for conference. And then after it gets into conference, only you can make the change by talking to your individual congresspersons and saying, absolutamente no, absolutely no. It's in your hands. It's not over yet, but it's one step closer to being the major screw-in you've ever gotten. It's in your house right now to determine. It is definitely in your house to determine. Lisa, thank you for correcting me. Where did I say Lisa Huckabee from? Did I say Oklahoma? I was wrong. It is actually Arkansas. She's a governor of. And Josh Hawley is the the senator from Missouri. So let me ask, was it in the video that I just said that? If so, I need to find a way to correct it. Anyway, entonces. So look, the bill is bad, but how bad is it? The bill actually puts, for those of you that have private insurance that think you won't be affected, for those of you who don't depend on tips that think you won't be affected, for all the different people that think they're not going to affected, they have already been affected. The budget, without anything passing already, is already going into inflationary areas. They just put out, I think they just tried to sell $20 billion worth of bonds on the market. I think it was $20 billion. They couldn't get it. They had to pay over 5% on those bonds. You know what that's going to do as we borrow more money to our deficit, as we hold these 20-year notes at 5%? I want you guys to think about that. That affects all of us. All right. I got another video, and this is the last one, but this is a little bit longer that I want to play. And then if you want to call in, or I'll keep reading the chats as well. But let me just call out a few people. John A., good chat going on. John A. Ross, Christina Quill, Deborah J., thank you for that. Who else is here? Don't Stop Me Now. T. Lawrence, welcome in. John A. And everybody else it's too many in Substack to call out right now. So let's go ahead and do the video. And then if you want to tell me where your city and state in Substack, I'll call your name out with your city state. I just love to see all the different places we're in. We're from all corners and of the country, in the middle, everywhere. Anyway, let's go. Those of you that are young enough to remember the Obamacare fights, the Affordable Care Act fights that began in 2009 through 2010, you will remember that there was a whole lot of stuff that happened, and eventually Senator Kennedy died. Eventually, we lost the seat in Massachusetts to that guy that drove around in his truck. I don't remember his name. But anyhow, it turns out that a big part of Obamacare bill passed, but an important section was unable to get passed because it was done in two pieces, right? Well, during that time, Nancy Pelosi, a great lawmaker, even though I have a whole lot of problems with her, she's a great lawmaker. She saved Obamacare. And how did she do it? They arranged it in such a manner that the pieces of the bill that was already approved by the Senate went through. The problem is there are parts of that bill, the part that did with the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act, etc., that wasn't done with cloture. They had to do these other sections of the bill with what's called reconciliation. The problem with reconciliation is that it can be, any policies that are passed with reconciliation can actually be overturned. And that is exactly a lot of what the Republican Congress did today. So if you take a look at the Republican bill, you see all these cuts that are ultimately going to affect those people who dependent on Obamacare, the portion that was built through reconciliation. And I want you to hear how bad it is. First of all, a lot of insurance going to be gone. Number two, the deficit is going to explode. Number three, the amount of people that were saved, that became insured. Remember, Obamacare brought down insurance like no other. Look, I am for single payer Medicare for all, okay? Obamacare is not that. Obamacare is still a giveaway to insurance companies, but it is better than not having insurance. It is better than nothing. The problem is some people still believe in this capitalist free market crap that doesn't work in healthcare. But okay, that's what we got. And we got a lot of people on insurance. That said, what the Republicans are doing is dismantling that portion of it. And in the process, there are a lot of backdoors that are dependent on it that affects Medicare and other parts of the program as well. I want you to listen to Steve Ratner. He's going to talk about the deficit. He's also going to talk about what's been cut. This bill is a disaster. Unfortunately, most of this disaster is going to affect the people who voted for Donald Trump. People in Appalachia, people that decided they became Trump supporters because I liked what he did before, as if he did anything that helped them before he didn't. But anyway, check this out and then we'll take it on the other side.
Let's talk about the deficit and what this House bill, if it does make its way through, if the Senate, which has said it's not going to vote, many Republicans for this, it's just too big. But if it does go through, what would it do to the deficit?
Yeah, as you can imagine, given what Ali just went through and all the lists of things that they're doing, the impact on the deficit is pretty significant. Let's just put some numbers on some of the cuts. First, the extension of the personal income tax reductions that were made during the 2017 bill and are set to expire at the end of this year, $2.2 trillion over 10 years, raising the standard deduction, $1.3 trillion, the child tax credit, $800 billion. And then you get into Trump's campaign promises, no tax on overtime, car loans, interest, and tips, $200 billion, increasing defense spending. This is his attempt to take Social Security taxes away from seniors so they don't have to pay them by giving them a special deduction. And then you get into the cuts, the student loan changes, the climate funds, and Medicaid, $700 billion of Medicaid cuts. So what does that do to the deficit? Here is the baseline deficit. So even without this tax bill, the deficit was essentially going to keep going up over the next 10 years, maybe come down a little bit at the very end, but essentially up. Then you add in the tax bill that we just talked about, including the fact that they've played the same gimmick they played in 2017, setting up some of these things to expire, and that would make the deficit impact higher, but not as high as if you made all this stuff permanent. The record of Congress, stuff almost always gets made permanent, and so somewhere along in here, they will make this permanent and we'll end up on this line, and this line is something like $25 trillion of additional debt. Now, I do want to say that the other thing that happened yesterday, not as visible and consequential as these House votes, is the fact that the Treasury yields went up very, very sharply yesterday. The Treasury sold some 20-year debt. It didn't go well. The 30-year Treasury bond is now above 5%. What does that mean? That couldn't, well, it means higher rates for mortgage originators and things like that. But what it also means is potentially the bond market's starting to say potentially $25 trillion of new debt over the next 10 years is more than we can absorb comfortably.
Yeah, Steve, it can't be overstated the importance of the bond market potentially weighing in here. Let's turn to your second chart with the headline simple but stark and telling. Tax cuts for the wealthy, spending cuts for the poor.
Yeah, Ali alluded to this as well, but let's put some numbers on this. If you're in the top 20% of Americans, you're going to get roughly a 3.7% increase in your after-tax income, really all from these tax cuts. But if you go all the way to the bottom and everything in between essentially leads you to the bottom, if you're in the bottom 20%, you actually lose $800. Why do you lose $800? You get a very small tax cut, and you get a very large cut in Medicaid and these other benefits that we were just talking about that affects the 20% disproportionately. So this is a highly regressive bill that essentially favors the wealthy, doesn't do much for the middle class, and hurts the poor. And then if you want to see this in stark comparison, if we simply eliminated the tax cuts for people making over $500,000 a year, which is roughly what President Biden was proposing, it would save $1.1 trillion. That happens to be just slightly more than the Medicaid cuts and the food stamps, or SNAP cuts, if you will, put together. So if we simply eliminated these tax cuts, we could eliminate these budget cuts on these poor people and end up, from a budget point of view, in the same place.
And Steve, let's turn to your third chart there. Tell us about the impact that this bill would leave on those with insurance.
Yeah, so again, as Ali alluded to, the budget cuts Medicaid in a variety of different ways. Some of it gets complicated. I'm not going to get into all the details, but the biggest piece of it is the work requirements, requiring people to, I think, work 80 hours or perform 80 hours of community service at least a month. Things like Ali mentioned, also checking Medicaid eligibility more frequently. There's making it more difficult for the states to get the Medicaid funds they're getting now, and then some Biden-era rules that made it easier to sign up for Medicaid, repealing those, so it becomes harder to sign up for Medicaid. So what does that mean? As Ali said, the estimates are 8.6 million Americans losing their health insurance. And what's interesting about this chart is if you go back over here, before Obamacare went into effect, when we had over 45 million uninsured Americans, it went down, 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 down. In here was Trump 1.0 with his first effort to impose work requirements on Medicaid recipients. So some people became uninsured. Down, down, down again. And now we're looking at taking it back up here and essentially reversing something like 10 years of progress in having fewer and fewer Americans without medical coverage.
So there you go. All the undoing of making the middle class a little bit better off. A decline, a transfer of the wealth from the working class to the rich. And the one thing that Steve Ratner didn't tell you there that he should, the deficit is going to be increased over that 10 years by $25 trillion. That is money that's going to have to be borrowed. The interest rate is going to go up because there's so much money being borrowed. People want more interest. Instead of paying 2% or 3%, it is now at around 5%. What does that really mean? That really means that our deficit, without getting any more services, is going to go way up because we're paying so much more to borrow the money. And by the way, guess who we're borrowing the money from? We are increasing these deficits to give these rich people more money. We are increasing these tariffs to steal your money and give it to the rich people. We are taking away health care so that these rich people can get a bigger tax cut. And with that money that they have saved, guess what these nice people are going to do? These beautiful, wealthy oligarchs, these beautiful, wealthy blue bloods, they are going to loan us that money at a higher interest rates so that we can pay for the other services that we have not yet cut. And for that, you get the honor of paying them your taxes right into their pockets, right into their homes on the Riviera, right into their yachts, right into their mansions. When are we as the working class? When are we as the intellects? When are we as the one who actually produce, the ones who actually invent, the ones who actually do the real work? When are we going to stop allowing them to have us look at a $400 million plane, have us look at the Afrikaners being refugees because of a genocide that doesn't exist? When are we going to stop looking at the smoke and mirrors that they have us preoccupied with? Oh my God, look who is harming you. When will we stop and see the light and focus at who is screwing us by creating fallacies, trends and this and that with books and woke and critical race theory? All these things they throw at you to distract you so that you don't look and really see that the economic system is screwing you, so that you don't see that it's the corporations, the enslavement, the mental enslavement, the antiseptic slavery of you as an employee, as you as a dependent of a system that doesn't give a damn about you. And it definitely doesn't give a damn about you. And that is the thing. When we realize that we are just pawns in the system, then we'll probably start reacting. Anyway, folks, that's the end of our videos of the day. I'm taking calls. Anybody want to call in? El número del teléfono, the telephone number is 281-823-7747. Repeating that number, it is again 281-823-7747. I have another subject in case nobody wants to call in, but I just want to see if anybody wants to call. Egberto, don't stop doing what you're doing, telling it like it is. Thank you. And that is from Don't Stop Me Now, T. Lawrence. I like that. I like that name. Don't Stop Me Now, T. Lawrence. John A. sends a lot of heart. Welcome aboard, Ann Byrne, G. Baird, John A., Mary and Susan Stockton. A lot of folks. Christina Quill, Debbie Halfrey, Lawrence Gilmore, Michael, thank you for being here. Raja, GR, Karen Gold. Wow, estamos llenos de personajes hoy. Okay, Paul Fleming says, breaking. NOAA predicts an above-average hurricane season with up to 19 named storms, including 3 to 5 major hurricanes. And what did Musk do with Doge? He cut it. Some NOAA offices are cut and closed. There is one thing that I want to point out in what came over. I want to show you how much the Republican care about the working class. This is important, what I'm going to tell you here. So everybody listen up. I want everybody to listen up, please. This is important. The tax cut for wealthy people, all those tax cuts that go to the wealthy in this bill are permanent. But in order for it not to trip some deficit numbers, things like tax on tips, no tax on tips. Guess what, guys? That's not permanent. That expires in 2 years. I want you guys to see what they think about the working class, because you don't hear a lot of the reporters pointing these things out. The things that matter to the working class are gone. And to fulfill a promise, they use gimmicks. Oh, we got to give them the no tax on tips. Okay. We can do that for a year, or we can do it for 2 years. I fulfill a promise, no tax on tips. I didn't tell you it was going to last forever. But the tax cuts for the wealthy, there's no expiration date on it. Democrats are going to have to come in and actually write a law to go ahead and start charging more taxes. But as far as you working class people, it just disappears and you start paying the bill again. Your fuel screws you. You voted for a guy who screws you. Okay? So let's be clear. The things for the working class aren't permanent. And by the way, that is exactly what he did the last time around. Usa su cabeza, gente. Usa su cabeza. Porque eso es lo que él hace. Okay? Okay, now, this is where, when I tell you ill-informed folks would say things. Let's listen to what Eric Hayes had to say. Were the 2017 tax cuts perm? No, have to try it out first, then see if it can. No, let me tell you. There's no trying out first. Math is absolute. As an accountant, you should know that, my dear brother. Math is absolute. Even in the 2017, the reason we have to renew some of the taxes here in the tax cuts in 2024 is that the business taxes were made permanent, but the one that affects people were not. Look it up. Look it up. All right, folks, telephone number 281-823-7747. Anybody want to call in? 281-823-7747. No calls. We'll go to the last subject, and here we go. The tip, let me go ahead and put it onto the screen, and then we can talk about it. It goes like this. The tip trick, how the Trump budget starves the working class. It takes programs that millions rely on, Medicaid, food assistance, student aid, sacrifices to fund tax breaks that primarily benefit those who already have the most. It is a redistribution in reverse. Imagine a woman in her late 20s raising a young child and working 2 jobs. On weekday mornings, she waits table at a chain diner just off the highway. On weekends, she picks up banquet shifts at a hotel near the airport. Some weeks she hits. All right. Harry, what's up? Hello.
Hello there, Egberto.
Go ahead, my brother.
Back. Don't stop thinking about the middle class and the little guy. You are doing it, Egberto. You are educating the middle class on how they're going to be screwed if this bill passes. Not only will with the SNAP benefits, if the bill were to pass the Senate, which I pray that it doesn't, it will also affect the food drive locations like my church, Fondren. They won't get as much food to give out to people if this bill passes, because they're going to cut the amount of food that they get for the food drives they give away. Yeah. And we as Americans have to let our senators know we don't want this. We don't want this grift that Donald Trump is planning to give a handout tax cut at the expense of the middle class, where with the 5% that you're talking about, that they were talking about there, where they borrow the money, they're going to have to pay more and run up the debt. That's what this man does. He just runs up debt, and he gives handouts to the oligarch and plutocrats. And we have to say no. And they need to listen to Egberto, as I wrote in the chat. Listen to Egberto. He's telling it like it is for working people. We still have a chance. These senators have to vote this bill down.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my brother. But let me just say, I hope the fight that we're doing right now for 2026, people realize that there's going to be a lot of stuff coming against them, a lot of misinformation. We can't fall for the okie doke again. Thank you, Harry. You have a wonderful rest of the day. I got some stuff I got to put on the screen. Thank you, brother. You too. All right, let's go ahead and put what Michael has on the screen. There we go. Record water temperature anomalies, May 14, 2025, and look at May 14, 2024. That is utter panic. That is stuff that changes water flows. When you get hot water on the top and cold water on the bottom, and you start to get difference in rotation of cold water sinking, and because again, if the water on the top stays hot, very hot, right? There's less of a circulation of the rotation in the ocean, right? This is some issues. But anyway, thank you for that, Michael Radnin. Let me get on with the tip trick. So let's continue with this lady. Most weeks she doesn't. Her schedule is built around whatever else calls off, whichever babysitter shows up, and how many tips she can pull in when her customers don't walk out on the check. She's not lazy. She's tired. She's not failing. She's just barely holding on. She doesn't ask for much, just enough to stay ahead of the next crisis. One sick day, one bounce check, one broken car door, and it all starts to unravel like nearly 60% of Americans. 60% of Americans, most of MAGA, she's living paycheck to paycheck. This isn't some outlier story. It is the American norm, life for millions of workers whose labor keeps the country running, even as their budget can't absorb a single emergency. That's what antiseptic slavery looks like. Last week, she saw a headline. The new House budget plan would eliminate federal income tax on tips. She read it twice. Finally, something for workers like her. Finally, a win. But what she didn't see, what the headline didn't say, is that while she might save a few $100 come tax season, the same bill cuts the healthcare, food, and education program that actually keeps her afloat. It's not a lifeline. It's a trade-off. And it's a bad one. Early Thursday morning, May 22, after days of internal negotiations and public brinkmanship, the House narrowly passed the one big, beautiful bill, a 1,100-page tax and spending package, drafted with support from the Trump White House. Despite defections from within their own ranks, GOP leadership managed to push that bill through with no Democratic support and just enough Republican votes to void. The most important part about this is the headline. The MAGA folks believe the crap and don't realize that what they got was screwed. The bill includes more than $3.8 trillion in tax cut, most of which go to the wealthiest households and largest corporations. It makes permanent the 2017 Trump tax cut, increases the estate tax exemption to $15 million per person, and expands loopholes for business income. According to the Institute of Taxation and Economic Policies, the top 1% of households would receive an average annual tax cut of approximately $79,000, more money than many people make in a year. And what about that waitress? She reports $10,000 in tips next year. She might see a refund boost of, $700. But guess what? She doesn't get the food anymore. Guess what? She doesn't get the forgiveness of the loan anymore. Guess what? She doesn't have health care anymore. So she has to pay full price for her stuff. If she misses work because her kid's school is closed or a sitter falls, and we're talking about 60% of Americans now, we're talking about 60% of Americans. That's what we're talking about, people. If she tries to go back to school to finish the associate degree she started, she may no longer qualify for a Pell Grant. The bill raises the minimum course load for a full award to 12 credits to 15 credits. So how can she work? And with 15 credits for a Pell Grant, why did they raise it to 15 credits? They raised it to 15 credits because they know hundreds of thousands, millions of people can't work and take 15-hour credits. It's the deceiving nature, the evil with which the bill is written, people. The evil. They know she can't take 15 hours to go to school and work. So they know they won't have to pay out money in the Pell Grant because guess what? She can't use it. The evil within this bill to give rich people a tax break. And you guys sit back there and clap your hand, MAGA. And you guys sit back there and talk about loving others. And you guys sit back there and believe in these people that are doing this to you. That's why we are here. That's what we do. Take the scab off the lies that you can actually see what they're doing to you. They're telling you, they're giving you policies that you can't use because you are enslaved as an indentured servant, as an antiseptic slave. 60% of America, and the others are just threading water. That's what we're talking about here, people. That is what we're talking about. I got to get out of here. It's 4:00. We'll continue this tomorrow, my dear brothers and sisters. But I do have to ask for the ask. You see what we do here. We need your support. Give us a cup of coffee. Politics Done Right. Go to politicsdoneright.com/support, or rather politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Please support the program. This is what we do. The mainstream media is not going to tell you this in this form, folks. We have to use, that's why I said earlier on, let's not allow Substack and these other networks to become a mainstream media. Because the reason we have what these guys are doing right now The reason we have that is because we have allowed it and you haven't been informed. I don't hate my MAGA brothers and sisters. I love them. I really love everybody. I really do. They made a bad choice. They have allowed their prejudices and all these other. They don't understand there shouldn't be any prejudices. We are in the same boat. We are in the same boat. Folks, please go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. I have it in the chat, in both chats. Please support the program. Sign up, become paid subscribers. Allow us to get help to put this stuff out more fully. The others aren't doing it. And look at a lot of the folks who have just joined Substack from the mainstream media. You get the same thing over and over again. Nobody goes into detail and tell you this. That's what we're doing. So please support what we do. It is essential that we do it. For us not to get this stuff passed means people have to be educated. Even if this gets passed, we have to be prepared for 26. And that education has to go on. So folks, I ask one more time, my brothers and sisters, support what we do. Allow us to continue doing this and allow us to get bigger to be able to do it the right way. Got to get out of here. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.